Well, let's get officially started. Good evening. Once again, I am Bill Brown, the Director of Congregational Vitality for both the Baltimore-Washington Conference and the Peninsula Delaware Conference. And it is a joy to have you with us on this Training Tuesday. Just a couple of housekeeping items. There will be opportunities tonight for you to interact with us through the chat. So you'll want to open up the chat box on your device so that you'll be able to interact with us at the appropriate time. However, if you have a question, we want to invite you to use the Q&A feature. It's a little easier for your host to keep track of the questions when they come in through the Q&A. But to get us started, I want to invite you to join with me in a word of prayer. Holy and gracious God, I give you thanks, for I'm continually reminded as we gather in these virtual spaces that while we may be in different places, we are connected by more than just technology. We are connected by your Holy Spirit. For we are the church wherever we find ourselves, and tonight we find ourselves gathered to learn how to more effectively enact the business of your church. For I firmly believe, O God, that administration is a ministry. And you have called us to this so that we can be good stewards of all that you have entrusted to us. I give you thanks for Erica tonight and for her insight and her wisdom that she is sharing, and ask that your Spirit would guide us and bless us in the name of Jesus. Amen. So as we're getting started, I'm going to open up the chat, make sure that you are chatting with everyone. And want just you to drop in the chat your name and where you are watching from tonight. And the chat is now open. So let us know and hear from you where you're watching tonight. Okay, we have somebody coming in from DC, and here come the names, and we will try to keep up. We are welcoming the Reverend Erica Robinson Johnson, who is the Chief Administrative Officer for the Baltimore-Washington and Peninsula Delaware Episcopal Area. What I have to appreciate most about Erica is that she truly sees the ministry of administration as a ministry that is vital and viable for the life of our local churches. And I just appreciate, Erica, that you would join us tonight and share your giftedness. And my gracious, we have people coming in from Delaware and DC and Baltimore and Clarksville. As I like to say, from Harford County and from Baltimore City,
and everywhere in between.
Everywhere in between. Oh, somebody loves that administration is a ministry. So it is. So Erica, I will let you get started.
All right, everyone. Thank you. And thank you for that kind invitation, Bill. If you don't know me, I am Erica Robinson Johnson, and Bill has told you my title. What that means is I hang out in the bishop's office and travel around across our area. And I have done that for the past 4 years. This is my fifth year, working with the cabinet and the staff in both conferences in order to equip you in your local churches. And I am so grateful to be here in doing this ministry. And before that, I served in the New England Conference for about 9 years as the assistant to the bishop there and the director of connectional ministries. Since 2013, I've been serving the church in this kind of administrative role. Before that, I was serving churches as a local church pastor in 5 churches for a little over 20 years. So I have been, and my husband's also a pastor who's serving in the Baltimore-Washington Conference right now. So I've been to a lot of church meetings, had my share of them, and certainly have experienced many, many different varieties of church council and working with various lay leaders in ministry. It is one of my spiritual gifts is administration, and so that is something that I bring to this workshop tonight, and just want to be kind of your guide to help you understand what is the role and purpose of the church council, and what you can do as a member or a leader of that council to make the biggest impact for ministry and mission in your community and in the local church where you serve. I am so grateful that you are here tonight. When Bill told me how many people signed up, I was thrilled because it is a sign that you want to understand what it is you're supposed to be doing, and you have some interest in learning and growing. And we always hope that all of our church leaders are interested in learning and growing throughout our ministry. And so thank you. Thank you very much for being here tonight. Tonight, we are focusing specifically on the church council, which is, a lot of people think of as a meeting, but more importantly, it is the people who make up the council, who are disciples, who steward the local church's vision and mission. As Bill said, there will be time at the end of my presentation to address your concerns or to address your questions. But please feel free to type those questions as they come to you in the Q&A, as Bill said, not in the chat, but in the Q&A. And then he'll be able to get to your questions when we have time for that at the end of my presentation. The first thing I'm going to show you on the screen is a copy of United Methodist Guidelines for the Church Council. This may look familiar to some of you. It may be brand new to many of you. Every 4 years, the United Methodist Church publishes these guidelines for every church committee. So you can buy the whole set, and there's a little box that they come in, and you can have one for the stewardship team, finance, trustees, church council, missions, all the different committees of the church. Or you can just buy them as individual books. They are available as a book or as a downloadable PDF. And the same price is for either one, $6.99 for the guidelines now. I'm not sure how much the whole set is. Maybe you want to check before you order them and see if your church already has a set in the church library or your pastor's office, or just go ahead and go to cokesbury.com and order your own copy. I strongly recommend that you make sure every member of your council has this book, has this resource, and reads it. And I encourage you to read it together as a group. Use some of the suggestions that are in the book. There's ideas in there for devotions. There's ideas in there for how to organize a meeting or a retreat. But most importantly, it goes over the guiding principles of what the council does, what your duties and responsibilities are. I'm not going to read the book to you tonight. I'm just going to pull out some of the things that are in this resource and highlight them and add my own suggestions. But the presentation is not a supplement for the book. I really encourage you to get this resource and use it. If you have an old set of the guidelines in your church, as I said, they're updated every 4 years in order to be as relevant as possible with the current understanding of our book of discipline and the requirements of each team. It wouldn't be a totally useless resource, but I encourage you to get the 2024 to 2028 guidelines for your church. So let's just spend a little time talking about what the church council is. The Book of Discipline says the church council is the executive agency of the church. The body, the executive function of the church is called the charge conference officially. But that means that in between meetings of your annual church or charge conference, then this group, the council, is the group of people who are responsible to guide and further the ministry of the congregation. The church council exists to create and supervise the strategic plans for a healthy and effective congregation. And there's all kinds of names and configurations for what this group is. I'm going to just, throughout my presentation, keep calling it the church council, but I am aware that some churches have something else, like maybe a unified board or an administrative council or an administrative board. Through the course of my ministry, I had all of those things. Bill's going to open up the chat and just give you a chance to type in what you call this group in your church, the people that meet to that make up the leaders of the church that can function in between sessions of your church or charge conference. Besides the fact that there's flexibility in what you can call this group, there's also flexibility in how many members there are and who makes up your church council or your leadership team. Um, the Usually a team like this would be all the chairs of the committees of your church. And that's kind of a basic way of thinking about this group. But it might not necessarily have all of them. You might function as a smaller team of key leaders. I'll say that no matter what you call it and no matter who's on this group, the most important thing is that these are the leaders in your church who are committed to deepening their discipleship. You want all the persons with this much responsibility to be deeply rooted in their faith, actively participating in worship, in Bible study, in discipleship groups, people who are tithing, giving generously of their time and their talent and their treasure. You want people who are witnessing to God's love. This group of people should be loyal to the values of the United Methodist Church, which means that you understand and are stay in tune with what's happening in the denomination. You read the conference newsletters, you read your district email, you understand what's happening in the general church. You have read and studied together the social principles. You are aware of the beliefs and expectations of what it means not just to be a disciple of Christ, but to be a United Methodist, so that you can focus on the mission. So these leaders work in tandem with the pastor to lead the congregation to fulfill its mission and ministry. And so these members, you who have joined us tonight, if you're on the church council, these are the kinds of things that we should expect of you as you lead your church in mission and ministry. So in order to understand what our mission is, we need to remember what our mission is as United Methodists. If we were in the room, I'd be like the bishop and I'd say it with me. The mission of the United Methodist Church is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. To make disciples for the transformation of the world. That is our mission statement, has been for many, many years as United Methodists. The council, the job of the church council is to plan and implement and evaluate the church's ministry aligned with that mission, to make sure that you're planning, implementing, and evaluating the church's ministry so that it is aligned with that mission. The church council work combines administrative duties with deep spiritual devotion and service. That little booklet that I showed you that you'll get, the whole introduction, opening chapter is all about being disciples and making disciples. And if the work that we're doing as a church is not focused on that, then we are doing something wrong. Council members are, along with the pastor, to inspire the congregation and serve as stewards of the vision and mission.
I'm going to interrupt for a second.
Yep.
Erica, I'm just amazed by the different names we have. We have a lot of ad councils, church councils, and unified boards, but I saw a board of stewards, which is not a name I have seen in a number of years. A ministry action team. I think, if I had to pick a favorite from the list, I saw one that's called the lead team, which is Leadership, Empowerment, Accountability, Discipleship Board.
I love that.
What
Thanks for
about
reading this, because I can't read the chat and talk at the same time.
that? Exactly.
I'm really happy to hear that. That's really, it's fun. It tells me that you are thinking about your name as a reflection of what you're doing, and not just pro forma, going along to check a box and say, yeah, we did that. It shows me that you're putting some intentionality into what you're doing and how you're leading, especially that acronym, thinking about, what your role is. So that's really exciting to hear. But again, it doesn't matter what you're calling yourself as long as you're doing as long as you're aligning yourself with the mission and vision, then you're on the right track. And speaking of vision, earlier this year, the Council of Bishops introduced a new vision statement for the United Methodist Church. Now, our mission hasn't changed. That's still make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. But given all that we've been through in the last few years, and with the general conference happening just last year and getting us launched into a new quadrennium, the bishops felt that it was time for us to refresh our vision and to reclaim our Wesleyan roots and remind ourselves of what it means to be children of God committed to following Jesus Christ. And so this is the new vision statement. It's on the screen. It says the United Methodist Church forms disciples of Jesus Christ who, empowered by the Holy Spirit, love boldly, serve joyfully, and lead courageously in local communities and worldwide connections. I just want to stop and give you a chance to digest that. If you haven't heard this yet, you haven't seen this yet, I want to give you a chance to look at some of these words and think about what they mean. And just want to highlight some of them. I want to remind us that we're still focused on discipleship, following Jesus. That's what we are about. That's what we're called to be. And that's what we're called to encourage others to do. And those disciples do, according to this vision, if we build up a, a church of disciples, we will love, serve, and lead together. Where? Not for the local church, but for the community and the world. So John Wesley said, the world is our parish. Always understand that we follow Jesus into the world, into our communities. It's not about us. It's not about sustaining our own traditions and favorite things. It's always focused on loving, serving, leading others in local communities and the world. And so we're going to look at each one of those verbs a little bit more closely, and you'll see the scriptural references that the bishops used as they put this together. The first is love boldly, inspired by Matthew 22 and John 13. The vision of United Methodists is to love boldly, passionately love God. Like Jesus, embrace and include people of every nation, race, gender, and walk of life. As the bishop was presenting this at the Days on the District, she was encouraging it. She was talking about how we're passionate about a lot of things. At the last day on the district, she started naming sports teams and people's passions came out. And she said, imagine if we had the same kind of passion for God as we have for our sports teams. And certainly we are called to love God. And the way we love God is by embracing the way Jesus lived. And Jesus embraced and included people of every nation, age, race, gender, and walk of life. So, as United Methodists, rooted in Scripture, understanding our call to follow and be the hands and feet and heart of Christ, we love boldly all people without exception. And then secondly, we serve joyfully. We serve joyfully, again, with a Christ-like heart, rooted, inspired by Psalm 100, Nehemiah 8, John 13, and 1 Peter. We are called to serve with joy. And so, again, with a Christ-like heart, we journey alongside the most vulnerable, often offering our care and compassion with joy. This evening, my heart is breaking for the people of Jamaica and anyone who has friends and family there. I'm praying with and for you as they and islands, nations around them are bracing themselves and holding on for dear life through this terrible, terrible storm. We think about who the most vulnerable are. That's vulnerable when you don't know if your house is going to withstand the wind and the rain. We think about the people that are vulnerable in our communities. I have two neighbors on either side of me who are federal workers who are actually military, and their housing comes from the government. And so they are not sure how one pays rent, one pays a mortgage, how they're going to make it, and how they're going to get by in the next weeks and months. That's vulnerability. I think about people who at the end of this week are going to lose their food assistance and don't know where they're going to get food for their children. That's vulnerable. And so, as United Methodists with Christ-like hearts, we journey alongside the most vulnerable. And what do we do about that? We offer care and compassion with joy because that's who we are as the body of Christ. And finally, we lead courageously. Again, following Jesus' example, we resist and dismantle all systems of evil, injustice, and oppression, striving for peace, justice, and reconciliation. This scriptural foundation is in Joshua and Ephesians, but really throughout the Gospels, we see Jesus resisting and dismantling, not just saying it's bad, but actually working to dismantle all systems of evil, injustice, and oppression, and striving to be peacemakers and to reconcile one another. This is our baptismal vow. It is rooted in who we are as Christ followers, but also as United Methodists. And so we, as United Methodists, embrace this new vision statement to love boldly, serve joyfully, and lead courageously. Now, there are a lot of things that churches do that have very little to do with any of that, right? So much of our time, energy, and resources are used in continuing activities, events, programs, because we've always done them, rather than engaging in the deep work of discipleship to fulfill the call of Jesus. I believe that if the church council is made up of the most committed disciples who are engaged in prayer, Bible study, building relationships with the community so that we really understand the needs of our neighbors, then we will want to come together to discern where God is calling us. We'll want to celebrate what God is doing in and through us, and we will be more vital and more fruitful. How many of us, if we were really honest, could look back at minutes from a church council meeting in October, say 10 years ago, and it would look exactly the same as our minutes from our meeting this month? I say that to challenge us a little bit to think about if the work that we're doing now is relevant and meeting the needs of our community, or if we just keep recycling the same plans, activities, events, fundraisers, even outreach programs year after year without asking ourselves if what we're doing is making any difference, without paying attention to if the needs are the same in our community, without doing some deep dive into looking at who we are, what we're doing, what we're about, how we're spending our money and our time, and seeing if it's really making a vital difference in our community, seeing if it's fitting the mission and ministry. The church council is the group. It's the group with the pastor who can set a new tone, who can model expectations, who can refocus the congregation on mission and vision if we've strayed away from that. Because you're the group of deep disciples who will help engage the congregation in that same work as we refocus our priorities. So let's look at the core responsibilities of the church conference. The key roles include envisioning and planning, implementing and evaluating. Those are the missional duties. And then I said there's also administrative duties. You've got to manage budgets, you coordinate the committees of the church, and you're making sure that you're aligning the activities with the church's vision and mission strategically. You don't have to do all of that. There are other groups in the church that take care of those administrative duties and sometimes the missional duties too, but you're the organizing body that makes it all happen, depending on how you operate. I know some of you put in the chat that you have a unified board, and so maybe then you do share some of these responsibilities. But ultimately, this is church conference season, so we know that you're the board that kind of makes sure that everybody's got their reports in, that you are making sure that everybody's doing the work that they're supposed to do. They're reporting in, you're voting on the things you need to at the church council, you're recording that, and you're making sure that you're in good shape with all those requirements and have your budget in place and your compensation for your pastor, and all things are ready to go for the coming year. This is the group that's ultimately responsible for doing that and getting ready for the annual church conference as well. Now, the chair has specific responsibility to lead with vision and humility, to prepare the agendas and assign responsibilities, and to coordinate and communicate effectively. We're going to unpack each one of those a little bit more here because this was billed as, church council chairs. I'm glad that obviously we have more than church council chairs here tonight. We have people who are on church councils or whatever you call them. We have chairs. I hope we have some pastors too. But the chair is primarily responsible with pastor and other lay leaders to keep everyone focused on the mission. Remember, it's not about you, it's about being followers of Jesus Christ. So you have to have some humility about you. I'll give a little bit of warning here that I have, sometimes I've gone into churches as a pastor, and I hear anecdotes that this still happens, where the leaders have kind of been doing this. They've been the leaders for many, many, many years, maybe even decades. I've gone into churches. The last church I served, the trustee chair had been the trustee chair for 30 years. And I've experienced church council leaders being in leadership forever, as long as anybody could remember. And there may have been a time and a season when that was exactly what the church needed, and God was calling you to use your gifts and talents and time in that way. And you may have led with great skill and devotion. And that may or may not necessarily still be what the church is it in the church's best interest to be a vital congregation that's relevant, that's moving the church in the right direction. If you find that your own agenda and doing things the way you've always done is counter to what's in the best interest of the mission or the needs of the community, maybe it's time for you to prayerfully go to God with that, and then go to your pastor with that, and suggest that maybe it's time to pass the baton to someone else. The chair needs to be able to focus on the main thing, which is making disciples of Jesus Christ and leading meetings and engaging others in the way forward in that mission and vision. So from the preparation of the agenda to presiding over the meetings to following up with good accountability and communication, the chair needs to do all of those things. And the chair can't be a lone ranger. I'm one of those people that I like to do things my way, and sometimes I think it's just easier for me to do it than delegate it out. It's one of my growing edges is delegation. But the chair of the church council needs to be a good delegator, because the work of the church really requires many, many hands and feet and heads and hearts. It's critical that you're able to assign tasks to others because your role as the chair is really to have the big picture in mind as well as some of the details like the agenda and the follow through. But really, you've got to be focused on that and let other people take care of the many, many tasks of the church. If it's also important to make sure that there's room for other people to have places to serve in the church. There's no point in having a team or a council or a board if you're going to do it all yourself anyway. Too often, our churches, one or two people are carrying too much of the burden. And if you're leading well, you'll draw others out to use their gifts to share with you and work alongside you in mission and ministry. Also, want to encourage you as chairs to collaborate with the pastor and leaders before each meeting. You should all be on the same page about your priorities. You need to be working in concert with one another, making sure that your vision that aligns with the church's vision and mission, and that you're all working toward the same goals. There should never be any kind of surprises at a meeting. I recommend that um, good practice that I liked to do. I've seen other churches model this where whenever you have your meeting a couple weeks before or no sooner than a week before, you are meeting together with the pastor, maybe the lay leader, and you going over what the rhythm of that next meeting is going to be. What are the priorities? What needs to be included? What are the objectives? What are the hoped for outcomes? What's going to be coming up? Where might there be some resistance? And where might you need to work on your communication and rolling out what you're hoping to get across? Set up every member of your team, of your council, of your board for success. And what do I mean by that? I mean that everybody should feel like they are coming to the meeting with the knowledge that they need, with the materials that they need, with the understanding of when the meeting is, where it is. Are you meeting on Zoom or in person? Everybody has the reports in advance and they know what the agenda is. No one should be caught by surprise. Um, even as even something as small, which I don't think is particularly small, but who's going to lead the devotion or the prayer? How many times have you sat in a meeting and the chair says, we need a volunteer to pray. And you look around and everybody starts looking under their chair or at their hands or start going through their purse. And everybody's avoiding that ask. We want well, first of all, we want people to not be put on the spot or shamed or um, strong-armed into doing something. We want people to live out their discipleship joyfully, as the vision statement says. And we also know that one of the highest levels of fear among human beings is public speaking. So I always say, let's never put anybody on the spot to speak and especially to pray because that is not everybody's gift. We want everybody to be a prayerful people, but corporate prayer is not everybody's gift. So for something as important as that, let's make sure that we are communicating beforehand and identifying the person that you want to lead the devotion or the prayer. And so they're coming prepared to do that. And there will be no surprises on their part. You don't have to stop and ask for anybody to do that. You already know who's going to do that part. And you're showing that it's a valuable part of the meeting because you've put some forethought into that and planned ahead for that important part of your meeting agenda. But the same thing goes for the rest of the agenda too. Everybody should know what's expected of them coming into a meeting. They should be on the agenda if you've given them time. And the other thing I want to encourage you to do is work with anybody who does have a report or a presentation to make sure that they understand how much time they have. And it may be that you need to ask them to actually turn in a written report, or slides, or a script in advance. I have to tell you, we do this at annual conference because annual conference is limited in time, and every minute that we lose is a minute that we can't make up because we're only at annual conference for a very short time. But the same thing for your meetings. It's a valuable amount of time. You want to make sure that you're not keeping people too late and you're honoring your commitments, but that you're making sure that people have time to do what they've come to do. So preparation and letting people know what to expect um, I find to be very helpful. Make copies or provide materials electronically so that everyone has access to all the same materials. If you're having a hybrid meeting and some people are in person and some people are online, make sure everybody has the same materials. Nobody should be left out. If you are, I especially encourage you to make sure everybody has the materials they need even ahead of the meeting so they have a chance to read them and prepare. I'm going to go over a couple of years ago, Bill asked me to do a training Tuesday on leading effective meetings. And so I did a whole session on just the meeting, just best practices for meetings. And so I don't have time to go into all that tonight because tonight was a broader picture of the church council. But I do want to give you, I've already given you a few, and I just want to give you some of my best tips for effective meetings, and in particular, in the context particularly of a church council. So um, this slide doesn't exactly align with what I'm going to say, but I want to encourage you. I've already talked about having some prayer or devotion at each meeting, and really every opportunity, every time you gather as a church committee for the work and business of the church, it should also be an opportunity for worshipful work. It should be an opportunity for you to come together, and if nothing else, that you pray with one another. But I would encourage you to use the opportunity to introduce scripture, maybe some focused questions to deepen your discipleship, or to build relationships with one another, or to share what's going on in the community so that you're always having an eye to what's going on outside your walls. That frames everything in discipleship, to remember whose we are and who we are as followers of Christ. But it also helps us to build the body of Christ together. You know, it's hard to come in straight to a meeting at the church and dive right into work and not recognize what people might be coming from. You know, today I heard from a colleague that they just got some bad news from the doctor. Another one, their husband is just lost his job, and another one has been going through a difficult time with their child. Everybody, we bring our stuff every time we gather, and to just dive right into the church's work kind of misses the opportunity to be the hands and feet and heart of Christ for one another. So beginning in an atmosphere of worship and care and community building, praying together, reading some scripture, sharing with one another is extremely helpful for the church to further its work, whether it's the church council or any other group in the church. Also helpful is if when you've met, you've already established some covenants with one another. I'll talk a little bit later about the importance of having an annual retreat, but at the annual retreat, I would hope that your group, your council, your board would decide on how you're going to covenant to each other. Things like you're going to commit to attending all the meetings. You're going to commit to communicating with one another in between the meetings in healthy ways, not having sidebar meetings or one-on-one meetings, but including the whole group in any conversation that's important. Not introducing things new and surprising people at a meeting. following up and in a certain time frame if you've been given a task. Whatever is important to you or how you're going to communicate with one another. We're going to listen before we speak. We're going to make sure everybody has a chance to weigh in on discernment conversations. However you decide to operate together, make sure you build a covenant, remind one another of it at every meeting, and change it from year to year as you see the need. Your meetings of a church council should be a balance of updates as well as new strategy, and really not a balance, but more focused on new strategy and less on reports. So many of our meetings, especially church council, I find, are just a rehashing of everybody coming and telling us what they did since the last meeting. And that's not necessarily a surprise to anyone. So many of our churches were doing all those things. So yeah, we know we had the spaghetti supper and we had the art in the park, and we had the worship service with our hub and all the things. But there should just be some brief reporting of what's happened, and really the bulk of our time should be focused on strategy, on visioning, of hearing reports about what's going in our community, learning the needs, discerning action plans, and delegating the work out to our teams. That should be really where the most of your work goes. Bill was reminding me that earlier today, the bishop was meeting with some pastors in the Baltimore-Washington conference, and she said, don't just meet to meet. And I echo that. Don't have meetings if you don't have anything meaningful to work on for your future. You can compile the reports. And again, I said it's church conference season. It's important to celebrate and reflect and look back on what you have done. But when you're meeting, it should really be about producing effective path forward for your mission and ministry. You should also build in time to evaluate what is and isn't working and make adjustments as necessary. Last year, the bishop had her leadership team read a book called The Right Kind of Wrong by Amy Edmondson. She's a uh, she was talking about the business world, but it applies to the church as well. It applies to any organization. It's about building an atmosphere in whatever team or organization you have that allows space to fail and allows the freedom to admit where we've made mistakes so that we can learn from them and grow from them and course correct so that we don't keep repeating the same mistakes. So if you find yourself just kind of year after year after year saying, we're kind of stuck, we're not getting anywhere, the same thing keeps happening, it's time to look at what's going on, and a simple evaluation that you can use after each meeting. At the end of each meeting is just ask these 4 questions. What are we doing in what or how are we doing in making disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world? How are we doing at that? That's our mission. So every time we meet, we should ask, how are we doing? How are we doing at making disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world? What's going well? What is not going so well and needs to change or go away? And finally, what new ministries might aid the church in accomplishing its mission? So, how are we doing? What's going well? What's not going so well? What new thing might we need to do to accomplish the mission? Just give yourself a chance to reflect on that every time you gather, or in between as an executive team, do that work so that you're constantly fostering improvement in the mission. A good idea is to set a good rhythm of meetings. Again, I said, don't meet just to meet. Meet when it's necessary. Bill, can you open up the chat again? I'm curious to see how many times church councils are meeting. Um,
The chat is now open.
Thank you. The Book of Discipline says that the church council should meet at least quarterly. So that's 4 times a year. And I would say that you should be able to do your work in 4 times a year. An annual retreat, maybe that's a whole day, maybe it's a couple of days where you really meet together to prioritize you look at the past and you evaluate, you do a deep dive, spend some time in prayer and scripture and uh, looking at your mission insight reports, understanding the needs of your community, and building priorities based on what the needs of your community are. And then you meet quarterly as the different groups of the church are equipped to do that work, but you're meeting quarterly to continue to set priorities and to check in on how things are going. If necessary, and if you meet monthly, I'm not gonna say stop doing that, but make sure that your meeting monthly is necessary. Make sure that it's making a difference. If it's just causing people to come out to a meeting, no matter what, because it's the third Tuesday of the month, and that's why you're meeting because it's on the calendar for the third Tuesday of the month. Um, that's not a reason to meet. Bill told me that there's people that couldn't come tonight because their church council had to meet, which I thought was kind of ironic. But this might be something that you could, this recording is going to be available. So if you're watching this later, thank you. Thank you for listening and tuning in because you had a conflict on this night. But this is the kind of thing that you might use as part of a meeting to train your team together. You can use other resources too, but make sure that your meeting time is valuable time, well spent by everybody. Um, if necessary, in between meetings, if you can handle things with an email or a few of the members of the team can meet and make decisions alone. And if not, you always want to make sure that everybody is informed. Communication is down at the bottom of this list, but it's one of the most important things that we communicate out what we're doing. Um, Preparation is key. I talked about the chair, making sure everybody's prepared for the meeting, getting things out, meeting with the pastor and maybe the lay leader too to get on the same page about what's going on so you're standing united in your goals and objectives. Plan well in advance. I would say 2 weeks prior to the meeting that everybody turns in their reports and their proposals and what they want to get on the agenda. And then you meet with the pastor and the lay leader and decide out all that, how you're going to frame the meeting. 1 week before, send a reminder to everybody of the meeting, attach the minutes from the last meeting, attach your agenda with all the times on it of who's going to do what, when, and where, including the opening devotion and prayer, who's leading each part, and how much time they have. Attach any reports you can in advance so that people can come prepared. They've read, they understand what we're going to be talking about. They've already had a chance to kind of think about it a little bit and then hear the report and act on it. Make sure that you include that you're including time for balcony time and discussion to really have time to think through and make sure everybody has a chance to weigh in on the plans that you're making. Only spend a little bit of the time delegating out. Don't waste too much time in the meeting asking for people to sign up for things or to choose things. That can be some of the follow-up work the chair does after the meeting to delegate out things that you've decided are the priority. Or if you decide as a group, oh, we can give this to this team. And if you're the chair of that team, then you can vouch for them, then fine. Do as little delegation during the meeting as you can, but delegation is part of it. And then following up to make sure everybody knows what's been delegated, what they're expected to do, and when. Take time to evaluate. I gave you a simple evaluation tool you can use. Celebrate together the time that you've spent and the things that you're doing. And then after the meeting, make sure you communicate, communicate, communicate. Share with the entire church the priorities, the plans, the the things that you are encouraging people to participate in. I know that you're already doing that, but I want you to remember that it can't just all stay at the council meeting. You want to make sure that all the other people are participating in the life. I'm seeing a note here. I wanted to remind myself to come back to delegation, the delegation part. There's a commercial that I keep hearing. I think it's a Home Depot commercial, and they talk about who the doers are. And church council, um, it, rather than being the ones who do everything, you should be looking for the gifts in the congregation and remember that God calls each one. So when we assume too much of the responsibility, kind of what I was saying earlier about not being a lone ranger, we can wear ourselves out, but we also send a message that other people aren't also called. And so it's part of the church council, the leaders of the church, to invite people to use their gifts in service. And that's one of the ways we make disciples. And it doesn't look like strong arming or guilting people. It should just come naturally out of a discipleship pathway. If you are constantly inviting people to follow Jesus and ask themselves what God has given them, what gifts has God given them, and how they're being called to use those gifts to live and love like Jesus. That's our role, is to constantly be inviting people into leadership and to sharing what they have in the work of the church. And finally, I want to say that you don't have to go it alone. The majority of our churches in Peninsula, Delaware, and Baltimore, Washington are very small. What we have going for us is that we are connected. We are a connectional church. And so we encourage you to work with the other United Methodist churches near you. In Peninsula, Delaware, we're forming clusters, churches that are in your same geographic area. You share a mission field. And this year, we're introducing hubs. Same thing, different name, in the Baltimore-Washington Conference. We expect that you will build relationships with each other in those neighboring churches, that you'll pray together, and that you'll serve your communities together, that you'll go out together and listen and learn what are the deepest needs of the people in your shared mission field, and then leverage the gifts that God has given you to work in partnership. You might even choose to have your annual council retreat together with your cluster or your hub in order that you can listen and learn and grow and plan and discern together in the work that you're going to be doing in that area. Use it for your advantage. Use it to build up relationships with one another. Use it to build up the body of Christ. Use it because we can do more together than we could ever do on our own as individuals or even as individual churches. So, Bill, that concludes what I had prepared to say, but I would love to turn it to you for any questions that have come in or will come in now.
The questions we've had so far were just technical questions, so I will answer those easily. We are recording tonight, and we will be posting the webinar and a PDF of the slide deck either later this week or early next week, depending on how quickly we can get the video turned around. But it will be on every website that we're involved in. So it'll be on pen-del.org for Pendel. It'll be on the bwcumc.org, and it will also be on pdcbwc.org. So lots of letters, lots of organizations, but lots of places you can find it. So if you have a question, you can put that in the Q&A now. Um, I just want to say thank you, Erica. One of the reasons I really appreciate you coming on is you take some concepts that may seem very foreign to people or very ethereal, for lack of a better word, and you just make it so accessible. And where was Training Tuesdays when I first started in ministry and had no clue what church councils were supposed to do, and they were just more than anything a reporting, and I just appreciate um, the ministry side that you bring to this. I even wrote down the evaluation questions for our vitality specialist. Those were excellent. So thank you. Um, if you have questions, friends, you can put them in the Q&A now. Okay. Do you have a template or a sample for a meeting covenant? And if not, where could they find one?
For a meeting covenant.
A meeting
Um,
covenant.
I don't. I do have a template for a meeting agenda. And we can, Bill, when we post the video, can we post things like that?
Whatever you send me, I can create a PDF and I will, not only can I will post it with the,
Okay.
and there are a number of places where you can find meeting covenants. If you Google meeting covenants, and I tell this for everybody who wants to either Google or use AI to develop a meeting covenant, very clearly in your search or in your prompt, put in the words United Methodist Church Council meeting or United Methodist Church Unified Board. That way, you know it's going to be something that, as it searches, that will be more in line with our polity, with our tradition, and with our values than what could come up with just a general search.
And if I find one, I'll add it there. But you're right. And I also think that covenants are better kept when you form them together. So in my experience, that's something that I like to do together. I used to do it with youth groups all the time. We'd get together and we're like, well, how do you want to behave? Or how do you want each other to, how do you want to be treated? And so, they were great at it because they're like, well, I don't want people to, I want to be respected when I talk and I want people to come when we have an activity and things like that. And so, what's important to you, what sometimes they come out of your pet peeves. Like, I don't like to go to a meeting and feel like I could have that I wasted my time. I don't like to come to a meeting that goes long. I really hate evening meetings anyway. And so then if I'm at the church till 9 o'clock at night, I don't push it till 10 because then I just, those kinds of things. So
My
start
fa
and end on time.
my favorite practice, Erica, we set the adjournment time as our first order of business. We voted on the adjournment time as the first order of business, so we
Yeah.
would stick to it.
Hard stop. We're leaving then and don't have a parking lot meeting, like leave, get in your cars and go home because the meeting's over. Unless you're, caring for one another, but don't keep the meeting going. But anyway, those kinds of things usually come from, what you want to get out of a meeting and you know what hinders that. And so your covenant can be formed through some real talk with one another and then make a commitment to it. One of the things that I think is important is that you set the schedule for the year at the beginning of the year, whatever the beginning of the year is, if that's September or January, whatever your flow is when you start as you have your retreat. With my churches, we would usually have a retreat in January because that's when new leaders became, our church conference was in the fall. We'd nominate new leaders. We'd have leadership starting in January. We'd have a retreat. Everybody would learn what their roles were. Then we'd have a council retreat, and then we would set the quarterly. Some churches it was monthly. However often we were going to meet, we would set the schedule for the year, and we would ask people, and we told people when we nominated them what the basic rhythm was and expectations. And we said, if you can't commit to the meetings, it's okay to miss one. I mean, people, you need a vacation, you're going to have surgery, whatever. But if you're going to miss many, then we need to rethink your position on this group. So I think church council is that important that everybody needs to be able to covenant to. Now, if your church council is like every leader in the church and you're just on it by default, then maybe you don't need such strict attendance rules. But I mean, the work that you're doing is so important that you should expect everybody can come. And that if people really can't commit to being there, then need to rethink if they're the right person. But meetings isn't the most important thing a church does. So I don't want to say that. I'm not too strong on that, but I just think you need to think about what it means if you really can't ever meet.
Okay, well, some questions have come in. Now, I don't know if it's me or you. Every once in a while, you're freezing up, but it could be me. Um, so, a couple things for those. I have a couple references for people just so they know about covenants. If you are in a unified board and you have looked at the book Mission Possible by Kay Catan, which we have recommended for those who are moving to the one board model or the single board or the uh, accountable board model. In her book are covenant samples. Somebody even said um,
Good.
on the 8 by 11 book. So that's her big workbook. So they're even given the size. So,
Good.
and I know a lot of people want the differences between a traditional council and the unified board. And I'm going to make it simple for those who are asking. If you go into our Evergreen searchable section on the, I know it's on the BWC website. I think you can also find it on the affiliation on the Episcopal area website. You can search for Unified Board, and we have at least four different training Tuesdays from four different presenters, one of whom is Kay Catan herself, about the single
Good.
accountable structure. So you can look that up. But there are a number of differences, and that's a whole evening of Training Tuesday that you can look up.
Good.
But some
Thanks for the idea, whoever wrote that in. Thanks
yeah.
for letting us know about the book.
And a couple other questions. We have somebody who's asking, how do I move from 11 meetings per year to 3 to 4 meetings? And how long should each meeting last?
I
Oh,
can't, I love that question. I love that question. I don't know how you do it because every church I served was different. And you always, they were culturally different. They were, um, people had different capacities for meetings. So you really have to take a look. If you feel like that sounds like they're meeting monthly, which I don't know. I'm married to a pastor. He told his church council, he's told his SPRC, I only want to do 2 evening meetings a week. In the last month, that has happened once. There's meetings all the time. And you have to wonder if, every group has to meet as often as it does. So I just think that that's part of sitting down and evaluating. Is this working? What could we do differently? Work it out together. Think about it. Do what's happening. If you're meeting every month, what fruit is coming of that? What would it look like if you tried going to every other month? I guess I would propose a gradual change rather than an abrupt change to get used to it. Because one thing we don't want to do, and I don't want you to go back and say, well, the trainer said we should only have quarterly meetings because that's what the Book of Discipline says. First of all, the Book of Discipline says a minimum of quarterly meetings. So you should be meeting 4 times a year as a church council because it's just that important. I mean, you're not going to make disciples if you are only meeting once or twice a year. I mean, you're going to have to check in, you're going to have to adjust, you're going to have plans, you're going to have to put in, accountability measures. So if you're meeting every month and you don't want to meet every month, try cutting out a couple of the months and see how that goes. And what you will then need to do is figure out, you have to think ahead because you may be meeting every month because you're planning month to month. You may be meeting every month and you're just dealing with a shorter time frame of strategy and planning. And so if you're used to that, oh, well, we're going to be together in 4 weeks, so I'll just, I'll save it for that meeting. You might not be able to. You might have to plan ahead. So it may be important for the chair and the pastor and the lay leader to sit down and kind of chart out and say, these are the things that we're going to have to make sure we do at this meeting, at this meeting, at this meeting, so that we're not forgetting something. Because what you don't want to do is go, oh, we forgot, we need to be planning this, but we didn't do it, and we don't meet again for 3 months. You'll end up meeting more often anyway. So it really just takes some strategic thinking and planning, but then also culturally to shift people. Now, generally for meeting, I said the retreat should be, it's probably an all-day thing. Could be a couple of days if you can get people to come. Don't do a couple of days if everybody can't do both days, though. It's important to have everybody commit to the whole thing so that you're all on the same page. But I just find more and more often that people can't really do more than an hour and a half. So, if it's an evening meeting, especially, in this time of year where it's dark longer and just makes me tired, it's like really hard, even on Zoom. I mean, in person or Zoom, an hour and a half is about my capacity. And also people have lives, right? They have to get from work or home and the back home if you're in person, and just to take more time out of an evening would be really tough on a lot of people to do longer than that. And you want to encourage people. You don't want to discourage people who have family commitments, whether that's caring for a spouse or an aging parent or a child. I mean, that's a lot to then come away from, to give up an evening. And so you want it to be worth people's time. And then if people have, like, people might have choir or people might have Bible study, or I mean, I hope they do. But and so if you've already got those, and then you're throwing in a couple meetings a month, that can be a lot on people.
Now, Erica, you had mentioned that you would share with us a church sample template for a church council retreat, or church council agenda. Somebody's asking, do you have any templates for a church council retreat agenda? Like, what if you had this day retreat? Do you have an agenda of what would they do on this day?
Yeah, I think I don't I think it's in the guidelines. I don't, I have a PDF, and so I can't go to it on my computer right now, or I'd look at it. But if I had the actual copy, I'd flip through it. But I think I remember there being a sample retreat in the guidelines. If there isn't, this is another thing that's an easy Google search, to find church retreat or church planning retreats. Um, also, I had done this in the last training Tuesday I did on meetings. I suggested bringing in an outside facilitator for your retreat. And conference staff, our vitality specialists would be good for that. I've led retreats. Bill, I'm sure, has led retreats. There are, even just having somebody that's kind of neutral, that isn't going to that's going to keep you focused and keep you moving and not let you get stuck. Sometimes that can be a very helpful way to get a lot accomplished by not trying to do it yourself. But if you do want to do it yourself, I think it's in the guidelines. And then if not, um, I'm going to add that to the list of things that we can put on the website.
I also put my email address in the chat for people. I supervise, and the vitality specialist and I work as a team, and um, we are willing to help. And I really liked your idea, because one of the things we are doing is working with the hubs. So to have an entire hub team do their planning all at one time, we can then interact with more churches
Yeah.
and have and scale uh,
Yeah.
quicker. So I think that's a good idea.
And
Um,
what can be done then, like, or even if for part of your retreat, like what I said was everything's supposed to be about making disciples. And I said the vision statement is outward facing, right? It's about planning a strategy for how you're going to respond to the needs in your community. Well, the vitality specialist can come in and work with you on showing you the demographics of your community, not just demographics, but showing you using actual data what the needs of your community are, but you could also bring in like the principal of the high school or an elementary school or a social worker or, you know, other people in the community who can tell police officers or whatever. You could learn during that retreat from your community what the actual needs are. I didn't talk a lot about data, but vitality specialists are all about using
We have that data.
data.
We have
And I really think that everything you do, evaluate as well as plan, needs to be using some actual data to make sure that you're not just coming up with your own ideas, which may be good, but may be off the mark if you're not taking a look at what's actually happening.
Now we have the best Training Tuesday participants. Somebody has already looked in the book, found that yes, in the book
Thank you.
is a retreat guide. So we have four more questions that I hopefully we can get to. Do you have or can you point people to some helpful strategies for transitioning a council from being report driven to vision driven?
Well, just easy one, no reports. Just write them. Just you have to written reports only, you know, and if you want to read the reports, you read the reports. You're going to have to write up an annual report anyway. So, you know, write up a mini report for each meeting and then compile it into one nice summary at the end of the year for the church conference. Um, that that's what we do with annual conference now. Most of our reports are written and in the journal. And so it's there for historical purposes. It's there, you know, for people that want to read and understand more about us. But we don't take as much time at we do celebrate some things and we celebrate what we want to see more of. But we don't necessarily want to spend a lot of time focusing on everything that everybody does um, because that's not our number one priority. So one way is just do all written reports and don't include it in the agenda at all. Um, or another way is what we did at church conference this year. If you haven't had yours yet, you'll see all the church conferences are the same across the area. We have the same format. And there's a chance for the lay leader and the pastor gives a report anyway, but the lay leader is asked to give a 2-minute report. I understand from the district superintendents that people don't know what 2 minutes is, so they have trouble keeping it to 2 minutes. But and so one DS just said, just tell me what, you know, one or two really celebrations you have from your church this year. And that's the idea. I think it's like, can you give us a praise report? And so, you know, maybe just keep it round robin and say just one or two things that your group has done that you want to celebrate and keep it short. And so you can have a moment to praise God and then get into the meat of the meeting. And another way may be to just have, not even at the meetings, but maybe in other ways, your newsletter or a worship moment where the groups, instead of reporting out at a meeting, this way more people in the church can hear it, is to do a short summary highlighting the ministry of that group. Maybe one month it's the missions board, maybe another month it's the youth ministry, maybe another month it's the United Women in Faith, maybe another month it's the men's ministry, and just highlight that in other ways throughout the church, but not necessarily at the council.
So someone just chimed in, church conference was great, meeting short, yay, worship was fantastic. So
Good.
Two people asked similar questions. So I'm going to try to combine them. Someone's asking, should the church council meetings be open to all people? Because
Mm.
they invite their whole congregation to attend the council meetings, but that only the committee chairs can vote.
Yep.
But that lengthens the meetings because people ask questions or they bring up items not on the agenda. So should it be open to all?
Yep.
And then combine that with who can actually vote at the council meetings.
Okay, so um, this is really, there's a lot of, I hate to answer this because we can get in trouble. So I'm going to say in a nutshell, well, I'm going to say, first of all, what first came to me was you need to sit down and evaluate that. Evaluate how it's, whatever you're doing. I suspect the question is asked because maybe it doesn't work, maybe it's causing some problems. So if it's causing some problems, first of all the church meetings except for staff parish, all the church meetings are supposed to be open to everybody. They're supposed to have open, everybody should be able to come to all your meetings for transparency. Um, at the church conference, every church member can vote. And so a church council would be only members of the council can vote. But just like we make a charge conference would be the same way. A charge conference, now I'm getting very specific language. You have to hear me. I'm talking book of discipline language. A charge conference means the members of the church council can only vote. Bishop Easterling has modeled that we invite all church members and all church members can vote. And so we changed the name to a church conference, not charge, but church. So you could do the same thing at your council meetings. It could be a council meeting that's open to everybody, but only the council votes. Or you could open that and say, well, anybody who's a church member who's here, if you want to, everybody could weigh in and vote, or we can do things by consensus. That's not going to work everywhere. Um, and if you're finding that you need to just contain some of those decisions with just a council only vote, then you need to do that. You need to put some parameters around it. You may have to say, we're going to open the meeting for discussion, and then we're going to go into closed session and have our votes. I don't know that that's always the best thing for church morale. So I would encourage you to have an open meeting, have the vote, decide who's going to vote, stick to it. And if you have problematic people, if you have people creating problems because they're talking too much, they're interrupting the agenda and the flow, the Bible says go one-on-one, try to have a one-on-one conversation, take a friend with you if that doesn't work, go and have some conversations in love with your brother or sister who are making it so that your meetings are going to be 2 hours and 3 hours long, so that you can try to course correct and and then work together as a team to figure out how you're going to keep your covenant, and work together collaboratively so that you are together on the same page to say, sorry, we're not going to entertain that. We're going to move on now because we're here. We're at this point in our agenda and we need to stick to the covenants that we've made. Thank you for being here, but lovingly, we need to ask you to be quiet now so that we can continue with our work. You've been invited because this is an open meeting, but we need to continue with our work now. There's ways to do it, and there's probably lots of ways not to do it. And you
So just for clarity, somebody is asking, so there are, and I think I can answer, there's no, they asked, so there are no closed meetings, but the SPRC is a closed meeting.
SBRC is closed, should not be an open meeting ever. And all the other meetings, as far as I know, are to be open in the church.
Yes. We have time for one more question. Some I'll just answer in the Q&A, but with so many of our congregations getting older, what do you do when there's no one to take over the positions?
Yeah.
It's not that everyone wants to stay in office.
Absolutely. And it's part of why we have people that either do things too long, too many years. He's the only one that'll do it. She's the only one that'll do it. Or there's only a few of us. How many of us just circulate, I'll be trustee chair this year. Bill, you be finance chair, and next year, or in a couple of years, we'll trade. That's the reality. Most of our churches are very small. Um, Ideally, people are fulfilling roles, using the gifts they have, training up their successors, passing the baton. And I know the reality is that's very difficult to do in many of our churches. It may be time to think about working collaboratively with your hub or cluster. It may be that you have people, in name only, but that you're really sharing the work with a cooperative, whether official or unofficial, cooperatively with the other churches, so that you can share the load. Um, and it may be that you just really need to pull together maybe, one board, and you're sharing that work. It's just not a good practice to, just, yeah. I mean, I know it's the reality, and I know it's very hard to figure out how to do it. I think it's another thing that you could work with the vitality specialists, to invite them to come and work with you on some new possibilities. But I think that we are in a time where we're in great shape, because we are building um, new models of working together with churches and BWC and the hubs, in Pendel and the clusters, to try to leverage our resources and to lean on one another, and build out possibilities, so we're not everybody's not wearing themselves out.
And I would echo that, Erica. For those congregations that are just struggling with that, I think that's a symptom of something that may be deeper. And working with me and our vitality specialists, we can help guide you through a conversation just to discover your current level of vitality and make recommendations for what you can do to move forward. We also had another person who said, when in doubt with some of these issues, check your book of discipline. And there's a new one that has a lot of dates on it. It's the 2020-2024 book of
Yeah.
discipline. Don't
Yes.
ask me what page number church council's on, but I know it's in there. So
Okay.
again, thank you, Erica. If I'm going to open the chat, everyone, if you could drop in the chat just a big thank you for Erica's time, because not just this evening, but I know the time it takes to put one of these presentations together, and I thoroughly appreciate it. As we give her an opportunity to read the thank yous that you are putting in, I'm going to put a plug in for next week's Training Tuesday on November 4th. We are going to be discussing the SPRC, Staff Parish Relations Committee. Some of your churches may call it the Pastor Parish Relations Committee. Some of your churches may call it the Personnel Team. It is all around the same idea of working with our pastors and staff. District Superintendent Elmer Davis from the Upper Shore District of the Peninsula Delaware Conference, and District Superintendent John Z. Cogman from the Two Rivers District in the Baltimore-Washington Conference will be our presenters. So please go to the Training Tuesday section on either any of the conference or Episcopal area websites, and you can find registration information. I've already looked at what they're going to be offering us, and it is some wonderful information for some of the best practices of working with some of the complicated but needed ministries through SPRC. So join us next week for that. And again, Erica, thank you so much. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Have a blessed rest of your evening. And I will put in to say again, please let us keep Jamaica and the surrounding islands in our prayers for the storm for Hurricane Melissa that is hitting them tonight. So thank you all. Blessings.